G'day everyone, welcome to another episode of Decoding the Future podcast. I'm your host Mahesh Krishnan, and today we're going to be talking about vibe coding, which is all the vibe these days. And to talk all about it today, I have with me Andrew Gorkic. Welcome to the show, Andrew. Welcome back, I should say. You've been on the show before.
Yeah, thanks for having me back, Mahesh. It's a pleasure to be back.
You know what, Andrew? I've got to start with something that I did a few months ago. Cursor.ai was getting really popular, and so I thought I should play around with it. I thought I'll try something simple, like the Wordle game. You know, the game that became popular 2-3 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, each word contains about 5 characters, and you get 5 chances to guess it. If you get the right character, I think it puts a gold color. I mean, the right character in the right place, and then otherwise it puts it's like a green color tile if you've got the right letter but in the wrong place. I thought, let me try creating this game from scratch. And so I told Cursor, let's do this. And I wanted a bit of twist in it. So I said, let's have variable length words so that if it's 7 character words, let's say Fujitsu, for example, it's 7 characters, I get 7 attempts to do it, right?
Yeah.
And in fact, I asked one of the developers, hey, look, how long do you think it would take to create something like this from scratch using React.js and things like that? And they said maybe about a week, maybe even 2 weeks, right, to get it all right.
Sounds right.
Yeah, the UX and everything else looking really slick and everything else. Can you guess how long it took me to do this?
With vibe coding, maybe a couple of hours?
It took me a whole lot of 25 minutes to actually get it going.
No
right?
way.
And at that time,
I'm
I had
not
to
really
check
that
it.
surprised.
At the time, I had it checked into GitHub as well, right?
Yeah.
So sure, I mean, it didn't have like a build pipeline or unit test and everything else, but that I had it up and running, right?
Yeah.
I know we kind of jumped in and started talking about what I did, but maybe we should take a step back and talk about vibe coding. What it actually is.
The term was actually coined by a really famous researcher. He used to work at OpenAI. His name's Andrei Karpathy.
Okay.
And essentially what it is being able to do software development with a large language model. These large language models are really good at outputting text. And so they've started to go into this new space where you can give these large language models agency to do things, and they have the ability to plan and then to do things in a controlled environment. So software development coding is a whole lot of planning, and then the actions that we take is editing files, running programs, looking at the output terminal, looking at the error logs coming through, and then going through this cycle to test and build solutions. So we've managed to develop these AI coding agents to be able to do exactly that. So they have the ability to run things in the command line. They can edit and do git diffs to then change code and ultimately be able to build stuff like your Wordle project. So it's quite crazy.
Cursor didn't get it all right the first time around. I mean, there were so many errors with it. I mean, it was the keyboard wasn't working well. It picked up the wrong file, and some of the UX wasn't quite right. But one of the things that I actually found was I could just put breakpoints, give it instructions, tell it what to do and everything else. I mean, the great thing is that I was coding in English.
Yeah.
Right? In my own language. I had done React.js many years ago, but I couldn't remember anything.
Yeah.
And I was able to give instructions in English and get it to write a program in using different frameworks and Node in the background and everything else, right? It was just amazing.
Natural language English, or whatever your natural language is the new programming language. I personally haven't written code per se for several months, and I'm a senior developer. I made this joke with a client one time, and I was like, yeah, they were asking how good this stuff is. And I said, I haven't written code in maybe 6 months. And then Sean, our director, he was like, I haven't written code in more than 6 months either. But that doesn't really mean anything because, the more senior you get, the less hands-on you are. So we had a good laugh. But that's the new space that we're in. But so we've come a long way because this technology has only really started to get really good in the last maybe 12 months. Mm-hmm. Cursor was really popping off mid last year.
Yep.
And so there's like this sliding scale that we're on in terms of where the capabilities come. So at the very beginning, when we had ChatGPT, people were seeing that it could write code, and the workflow was that you'd go to ChatGPT, you'd say I need to do this, and that's where as you were saying, natural language, you'd just be prompting it, telling it the things you want to build. It'd give you some sample code, and you'd literally just be copying and pasting that into your development environment, and then pressing play. You'd run the code, and then you'd see it wouldn't work. You'd get errors, and then you'd copy and paste that error, go back to ChatGPT and say like, fix this. I don't know what's going on, and then you're going back and forth. But now with these tools, cursors, this is one you've mentioned. There's a bunch of other I'm sure we'll talk about later. The whole thing, you can almost go fully agentic where you're hands off for a lot of the process, and it's looking at its own errors coming through. It's running the checks and the tests, and then self-iterating and self-growing on its own. So we're starting to move more and more into that autonomous phase. That comes with some of its own risks. Another thing I'm sure we'll talk about. But it's really interesting.
But one thing, it's actually given an interesting point that you mentioned, right? You said you hadn't written code, a while kind of thing. And it allows people. I mean, particularly think about startups and so on. You have these founders who have no background in coding. It allows them to create these applications from scratch because they're using English as their medium of instruction to create these applications and so on, right? So the barrier of entry for coding is kind of like, in a way, it's been lowered, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. We're in this like golden age of ideas. It's less about the ability to code or build, and architect systems. But the ideas that you have, because now as you were able to build a Wordle game. So if you can make your that game a little bit more creative, a little bit more appealing to a certain market, then maybe what's the difference between you and Wordle, right? So it's really about the ideas, because the actual implementation there's so much less friction to get in.
Yeah, but again, being a senior developer or a coder who's got that knowledge will take you a lot further than someone who doesn't know how to code as well, right? I mean, this is one of those key things. I mean, like the example that I was telling you about, when it first generated code, it didn't work.
Yeah.
I mean, like because I've come from a very strong, I suppose, coding background, I could actually do things like putting breakpoints and watching variables and doing all kinds of stuff, right? And someone without a coding background may struggle with some of those things as well. Right?
Yeah, so it can write the code really well. It can self-iterate and fix all of its own bugs. But the system in which it lives in, so that environment, setting up that environment, all of the DevOps, quotation marks, type activities, that those sort of ancillary tasks to get a piece of software all the way to production is not as closed loop and automated as what I described that development workflow is. So having a fundamental understanding of software development is key.
It's no replacement for good architecture. I mean, you still need to have good architecture in place. I mean, we talk about it probably gets you to a point where it's good enough. But when you're thinking about, what are the kind of patterns that you want to use in terms of like how do you scale it, and how do you do, error management and all this kind of stuff, that's something that you would probably need to direct it to write and do, right?
Yeah, so it's like to get to MVP is the new amazing thing. You can get something off the ground to just get something out of your brain and see a bit of software running quite quickly. You can do it in a weekend, you can do it in 25 minutes actually.
If it's simple like a Wordle.
So to MVP, super easy. To production, a little bit harder. In saying that though, with these new agentic models for software development, there's nothing stopping you from learning all this stuff very, very quickly. So you, if you know, in the startup world, people can figure out how to do all of that DevOps work quite quickly if you've got that hunger and that willingness to learn.
Yep. And the other thing is, I think it's almost becoming the new baseline. I mean, if people are going to go look for new work and things like that as a developer or whatever it may be, there are people out there saying, well, do you do vibe coding? Like, because they want you to be using this in a day-to-day work, right? I mean, I know the Wordle was a very trivial kind of example, right? And the concept is already out there. You know how to write it and so on. But typically, people have newer ideas and they want to do something a lot more complex than that. And they'd be doing vibe coding all the time. I mean, it's like the stuff that they're doing 8 hours a day or something like that, right? It's part of their daily work, iterating through this, changing the stuff. The whole thing is just, it makes them go faster.
Yes.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, that's something I didn't mention. That's we were talking from the context of someone who doesn't have much of a technical background, a founder with the idea.
Yeah.
But if you already are a senior developer, you've got experience, you understand the principles of programming, then you can, I don't even know what the multiplier is, 10x, 100x your output. And that's what I found personally, is that you can just do stuff way faster than what you could do before. So like, for example, in personal experience, stuff that would take us to develop, maybe 6 weeks, we're doing in a couple of days to a week.
Wow.
So the big adage in the technology space is fail fast and learn quickly.
Yep. And this allows you to do that.
That's just gone like through the roof now with this stuff because you can just try stuff really quick, see if it works, see if just validate an idea, validate
just
a
throw it away
part.
if it doesn't work.
If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But then no problems, and you can just keep going. So before it was like, we would have all of these libraries that you would want to leverage as a software developer because someone's put in the work to abstract a bit of code to do a certain thing in a repeatable manner. You almost don't really need that as much because you can just build stuff from first principles and you can try out a certain direction, and if it doesn't work, it's no problem. You only spent half a day on it.
Interesting you bring up it being a multiplier. I was reading Cursor.ai. They had published some numbers, and it spoke about how it improved productivity 30 to 50% in development cycles. And this is another interesting that I actually learned about in terms of like numbers, if I can call it that. Replit CEO, I think I remember reading through an interview that he had actually quoted about, he was talking about a doctor in London.
Yeah.
And he had created an app to the cost of about $100 or something like £100, I should say.
Yeah.
And he had gone out to the market to actually say like, hey, how much it would cost to write this app?
Yeah.
And they had given him numbers of about $100,000.
No way. It's crazy like what people are, I suppose it's, AI is so hot right now. So I'm not surprised that there are people out there that are trying to, ride the wave as much as they can. But
it may not be production ready. I mean, like for £100, but hey,
sure.
look, 100,000 pounds to 100 pounds, big difference, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I heard that GitHub, they've got their own agentic AI system called Copilot. They've been bringing in millions of users as well. So
it's really taking off,
crazy,
right?
Yeah,
it's really taking off. So, Andrew, I'm going to ask a very direct question.
Okay, go for it.
Are developers going to be replaced, right? Are developers out there thinking, oh my God, my job is under threat over here?
Yeah, I mean, when I first started using this, I had a moment where I was like, this is insane, The change and the amount of how much it can do and how intelligent it is. You really feel that way at the beginning. But after using it now for quite some time, I'd say the role of the developer is not gone completely. It's definitely, definitely. And then that's the more I used it and started to understand the capability and the limitations that come with it. That's when I started to realize, okay, I've still got a job for a little bit. So it's really shifting and augmenting the role of the developer. Before, it was all about knowing the syntax really well and being able to define a function and understand, troll through documentation for ages and understand how a certain tool needed to be used, right? You'd spend so many hours in that space. Now, these AI agents can do all of that. So the role is more, if you think of it like a conductor of sorts, as opposed to the actual instrument player. And so when I'm working with these models, it really feels like I'm working with like a really smart and really keen and eager junior mid-tier engineer. Who's got so much initiative to do stuff, and sometimes you really need to pull them back.
In a way, it's like a little bit like pair programming, right?
Yeah, for sure. It sometimes, and I think this is the universal experience when working with these large language models, because they output in English, they output in code, things that we understand. Sometimes you forget that it's not a human on the other side. That's this new blurred line that's sort of emerging with this technology. Is that, if you're using ChatGPT, sometimes it feels like there's someone else on the other side that's replying, and it's the same way with the coding agents, because it's like you just tell it to do something, and it starts doing the work.
From my own experience with like pair programming, like I was just sitting there with a really enthusiastic developer by my side, which is the agent in this case. I'm just telling the agent like what to do. It's like, hey, I'm sitting back over here, and it's like, hey, do this and do that, and that's not working. You need to fix this, and so on and so forth. And that's how it actually goes. So look, it is a bit of a paradigm shift for a lot of people in terms of like, rather than sitting with another developer and writing code together, you're now sitting with an AI agent, not in the physical sense, so virtual sense, sitting with this AI agent and giving instructions to the AI agent, and hey, this is what I want you to do. Go and fix this. Hey, that's not looking quite right the way that it should be. Go and fix that. But you're also doing this whole thing where you're setting up breakpoints, you're running it and looking for errors and so on, and then giving further instructions to change code and so on.
And so earlier I was talking about this sliding scale from manual to autonomous. We're in this, and this is where the term vibe coding comes from, because you give it a set of instructions, and then it goes and does what it needs to do, and it could write thousands of lines of code, but I'm not going to read those thousands of lines of code and spend the time to understand it, because that's the thing that takes time. You just check the vibe, and it's a very Gen Z type language. So I don't know how it fares with our more professional audience. But what I mean by check the vibe is you'll run the app, and if you've managed to get through all the bugs, it's self-learned and fixed everything. Your job now becomes the tester to see that whatever the intent and the requirements of your product has been satisfied. So you're checking, does this button work? Does this do what I expect it to? When I click this, does it do that? Whatever your intent is. And so you're just checking from a vibe, and by vibe it's like the feeling. Has it done the things that I want it to do? And you see it and it looks good. And so you'd be happy with the end product.
But it also has some additional dangers, right? I mean, like one of the things that in another episode we spoke about this as well, is the large language model has actually learned how to program by looking at a huge archive, if I can call it that, a huge code base, different code that have been written and so on and so forth. And sometimes not all the code out there in the internet that it's been trained on is really well written. I mean, it probably has, opens itself to something as simple as SQL injection attacks and things like that, and could be writing that code and bringing it in. And if you're not a seasoned programmer and you don't spot these things, I mean, you're opening up your application for these kind of attacks as well. So you got to be. And this is where I suppose like bringing that experience and everything else really helps.
Yeah, for sure. And in the what is that even called? Like the pre-AI era. I'm sure the history books are going to mark this point in time with some terminology. But yes, before all of this technology was here, That's known as the Stack Overflow problem.
Oh, yes.
If you just go to Stack
Copy paste.
Overflow and you copy and paste the code that's in there and just throw it into your application, and you don't really understand what it's doing, there could be broken code. It could introduce all these bugs. There could be security vulnerabilities from what you've brought in. These things apply, and almost it's if you don't have a trained eye and you don't know the foundations and the principles from a security perspective, it's hard to spot because and this is where even in when you're talking to ChatGPT, it's hard to spot the hallucinations.
Yes, the same thing over here.
It's the same thing here.
Yeah.
Because the code looks really convincing. It looks well written, but it could open a backdoor that you had no idea about. So these are the new risks. And again, when I was talking about that sliding scale from manual to autonomy, when you're in the full autonomy space and you're going full send on the AI agents side of things, it takes a lot of trust to be in that space because you're not actually reviewing every line of code in that process, especially if, and this is an interesting risk or challenge that's emerging with using this stuff. The expectations are going up, right? Because we all know that this technology can make you move faster. So especially with us, when we're working with clients, and they know, oh, I've heard about this vibe coding thing, and apparently you can do a piece of work in a week or 2 weeks instead of 6 weeks. And it's like, yes, you can, but if you can get maybe a working product, maybe a proof of concept in a short period of time. But if you want to put something through to production, you need to put the brakes on and really take the time to review a lot of what's been written and make sure that you bring in those security principles. I can give you an example if you'd like.
Oh, sure. Go for it.
So I heard online in the startup space, because as we were saying earlier, right, founders, they've got the ideas and they just didn't have the technical capability or the capital to even bring in the
hire
team
a
to
developer
do it,
or
right?
something like that, or developers, I should say.
So now we're in this space, and there's this app called T that was released in the US.
Okay.
Or it came from the US, and what the app was. It was kind of like in the dating space.
Okay.
It was an app for women to use, and they would need to do ID checks to prove that their identity and all these sorts of things. And the idea was that they would be able to share their experience about guys that they've dated in the local area.
Okay.
And the idea is that like they share the red flags, like for the dangerous experiences they might have had with a certain guy. Anyway, the point of the app is not as important as more so what happened with the founder. This guy didn't have a huge amount of software engineering background. He did like a 6-month online course to figure it out, and then he got a hold of these AI agents. So he built this app. It went super viral. A lot of people were using it. A lot of people put a lot of their data in because of that ID check that I mentioned. But he put it in a cloud database, which was publicly open and with the keys exposed in the application itself.
Okay.
So someone was able to get a hold of the app. They saw the key was in the app, easy access, public endpoints, no security around the app at all. So there was I think it was 100,000
data of women and
users that had uploaded photos of themselves, their ID, and it just got scraped off the internet. And now, obviously, this is
the danger. I mean, you can be I suppose in a way you can be a lazy programmer, or you can be not come from that background. But the real danger is that you can't be too lazy, or you need that bit of technical expertise once you kind of start to scale this thing up.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
So now this is really good, but I want to let's talk a little bit about some of the existing applications. I know you spoke about Cursor.
Yeah.
And you mentioned GitHub Copilot as well. So what are the tools that people are using these days generally?
Yeah, so Cursor was probably one of the first that took off. They were a startup, and that had the most success, I'd say, and went the most viral. At the beginning. GitHub Copilot had been around for a while, but it was sort of pre-agentic,
Yeah.
where they would use large language models to do autocomplete, kind of
Yeah,
like
that's what I remember.
we've
using
had
it for.
autocomplete on our phones for a long time, but has not been that great over the years. And so the first use case, if you could call it that, was autocomplete.
Yeah.
And GitHub Copilot implemented that quite early. Cursor did that too. But then Cursor started doing the more agentic part where you just let it go and do stuff. Right?
You give instructions in English kind of thing. That's
Yeah,
the thing.
yeah,
Tell them
yeah.
what it needs to do,
and,
right?
And
Yeah.
so then what came after Cursor was Windsurf. They came out a couple of months after Cursor. And they all do the same thing. And then another one that's in there that's quite popular, and the one that we use is called Klein. What else is there? Yeah, those are the sort of the big ones.
Interestingly enough, you probably don't know this as much.
Yeah.
Fujitsu have built their own SE Buddy, and the reason for that is that a lot of work gets done in Japan, and they don't use English; they use Japanese.
True.
Right, and so they found that by building our own, we were able to do a lot better using that tool. Right, I mean, they haven't rolled it out throughout to all the countries, I suppose. But it's an internal tool that we actually use.
Yeah.
So,
very interesting.
but you know, it's also interesting that the valuations of some of these companies is wild as well. I mean, like they're going crazy, you know, like in terms of like what they've done and everything else.
Did you see the one about Windsurf?
Windsurf was really wild.
Yeah,
was it $3 billion? Was what? Was it OpenAI was trying to buy?
It almost. But that was like its own Netflix drama. I'm sure someone's going to make a movie out of it one day. It did end up going through.
Yeah, and so I believe the CEO and one of the co-founders and some of the other staff were acquired by Google for $2.4 billion or something like that. I mean, they had additional rights to use the software. And
it was like CEO and the top talent of just got like scraped out of Windsurf to go to Google. Yeah. But then that Windsurf did end up getting bought.
Yep. Don't know how much, right? I mean, in the end, it was probably not $3 billion.
I don't think so. But I think it was the parent company of Devon, which was another popular agentic software tool.
What about other, we generally talk about vibe coding itself, right? In terms of design and everything else, are there any tools?
There's a couple of good ones. So this is more for the front end UI, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So a big one that's sort of popped up is v0.dev.
Oh, yes.
So that's from the company called Versal. They've primarily been in the hosting serverless functions, but now they've sort of built out this tool called v0.dev, and that's where, very similar to that peer programming concept, you can just give instructions for how you want an app to look like, whether it's an iOS app or a web app. You say, I want a button here, I want a button there. Put the text here, make it with this color, and then it'll actually build all of the front end components. And you can then take all of that code and then put it into a tool like Cursor or Klein, and then build out all of the actual capabilities behind the front end. Another one is called Lovable.
Okay, I've seen that one as well.
So those are two big ones that I've seen. Also Figma. Figma is another big company. They just actually went. They had their IPO last week, I think it was. And their valuation shot through the roof. It's really hot at the moment. But Figma is more around building wireframes for the UI design. But they're starting to also introduce AI into their stack.
But it's amazing, right? Right now you can actually like hand draw something and then take a picture of it and say, look, I want the UI to look like this.
Yeah,
it's
literally, it's just like one of those, napkin in the bar type thing. You have
amazing.
A conversation, you're like, oh, how cool would it be if you had an app that did this and looked like this, and you can still be sitting in the bar, take a photo, and then have a
amazing,
front end built
really.
for you.
I mean, like where we've gotten to really in the last just 2 to 3 years, I think. Amazing. Okay, Andrew, before we wrap up, any final words of wisdom for all the developers out there who are trying to either get into vibe coding or doing a little bit of vibe coding themselves?
Yeah, I think you really just got to try. You got to just pick up one of these tools and start prompting it, giving it instructions. Come up with a pet project over a weekend, kind of like your Wordle app. If we brought this whole thing full circle, and give full trust at the beginning, and just let it do its thing. And just keep prompting it and see where you get to the end. And then through that experience, you start to get to understand where it goes off the rails and how do you bring that back in. So that's to start. it really becomes about clear communication and communicating intent. So, and this is where, like, in a professional space, it's really about understanding the business requirements. What does the end user actually want and need? And how do you translate that into a set of requirements to then give that to an AI agent? And then thinking systems. How do these pieces fit together? Understanding the security side of things, and like use these agents to support you in the security review of a piece of technology that's been written by the AI agent. I'd say those are the sort of the main points.
That's a really good advice. Look, from my point of view, I think I think it was like a year, maybe a couple of years ago, we were talking about this prompt engineer becoming like this, this new kind of role that's there in companies and things like that, right?
People were like, is this even like a real thing? But it's like, it really feels like that's the space we're in now, being good at prompt engineering.
Yeah, so the whole thing is about how good you can actually communicate your thoughts with these agents, if I can call it that, and then get it to generate code and everything else. I think that is going to be the new, I suppose, like the paradigm shift for a lot of developers, right, to learn that. But yeah, great having you in the show again.
Thanks for having me,
Andrew.
Yeah.
And for all our listeners, thanks once again for listening in. And if you really enjoyed the show, please share it with your friends and colleagues. And until next time, goodbye.
Thanks, guys.